They told us we were here for science. They didn't tell us what was beneath it. My name is Dr. Eli Navarro, and I was, a glaciologist under contract with an international coalition called IGSRE, International Geosurvey and Research Expedition. You won't find it listed on any official records. On paper, I was part of the U.S. Geological Survey, with a side appointment to McMurdo Station for climate data analysis. That, too, was a lie. I arrived in Antarctica via a blacked-out LC-130 Hercules, flying low and silent over 1,000 miles of unbroken ice. There were no flags on the fuselage, no call signs, no flight plan. And we didn't land at McMurdo. Instead, we touched down at a facility simply labeled Station Novice. It was buried into the base of a jagged ridge at the edge of Queen Maud Land, not far from the old Nazi expedition routes. You know the ones. Those weird, half-buried stories about secret bunkers and disappearing teams in the 1940s. Yeah, I thought they were BS too, until I got here. Station Novice was different. Quiet. Sterile. It looked like a cross between a data center and a Cold War-era fallout shelter. Thick steel doors, reinforced hallways, no windows. Every wall buzzed with the faint hum of industrial air filtration, and cameras followed you like insects, silent, unblinking. There were only 15 of us stationed there, scientists, engineers, military liaisons. Each of us had been hand-picked. Each of us signed more NDAs than I could count. We weren't allowed satellite phones, no internet, not even paper mail, just a terminal with internal messages, controlled, monitored, and censored. I lasted there 194 days. Long enough to learn the truth, too long to escape it. It started like any normal research post. Ice core analysis, subsurface mapping, climate reconstructions using radiocarbon and isotope data. But as the days passed, things started to feel off. It was subtle at first. The seismometers picked up rhythmic tremors, not earthquakes, not glacial cracking. Regular pulses every 91 minutes, always centered around the same underground point. We assumed some kind of geothermal vent or hidden tectonic fault. But the pattern never changed. Never, not once. That's not how the Earth works. Then came the drill orders. We weren't just digging for ice cores anymore. We were directed to bore straight down, using new tech that none of us had ever seen before. Plasma cutters, ceramic-coated vibro bits, tools that seemed overkill for ice and stone. And we weren't doing it alone. Every time we opened a new borehole, military personnel, fully suited, armed, stood guard. Silent, watching. Like they knew something we didn't. The hole hit something at 2.9, 3 miles deep. It wasn't rock. It wasn't ice. The core samples came up jet black, metallic with a slight sheen like obsidian. No identifiable mineral structure, no radioactive decay. And when exposed to heat, it didn't melt. It vibrated. A low, almost subsonic hum. We sent the samples to the metallurgy lab. They never came back. Around day 87, Dr. Mikhail Petrov, a Russian physicist with a background in quantum systems, asked me if I'd been having the dreams. I told him no. He just nodded, smiled, sadly, and said, "You will." 2 nights later, I started hearing it. A sound in the back of my skull, not through my ears but behind them, like a tuning fork pressed into the bone, and with it came images. Fractals, geometry that made no sense, a corridor made of impossible angles, something buried in the dark, breathing, slowly, waiting. Everyone started having them. All of us. We stopped talking about it out loud. We didn't have to. The bags under our eyes said enough. No one was sleeping. No one dared to. Dr. Rena Ellis, the station psychiatrist, was the first to break. She locked herself in the comms room and tried to blast a message through the encrypted link. They found her with both wrists slit and her face frozen in a smile. She carved a symbol into her chest with a scalpel, an eye inside a downward spiral. After that, the military guys took over full control of the research. No more experiments without their clearance. No more questions. But by then, it was too late. The structure beneath the ice had started to wake up. Day 103. The drilling resumed. They wanted a direct chamber breach. One of the engineers, Thomas, quit on the spot and demanded evacuation. They told him it was impossible. Storms, budget cuts, bullshit excuses. That night, Thomas disappeared. We searched the tunnels, the airlocks, the snowfields. Nothing. Not even footprints. He was there 1 hour, gone the next. That was when I realized something wasn't letting us leave. The magnetic readings from the boreholes started fluctuating. GPS stopped working. Clocks were slipping, minutes vanishing. Our equipment said it was 4:12 p.m. in one lab and 3:48 in another just 20 meters away. Petrov theorized a localized temporal anomaly, that we were brushing against something outside of our space-time frame. I laughed at him, told him he'd been reading too much Lovecraft. Then I found myself standing in the storage corridor with no memory of how I got there. I had blood on my hands. Not mine, and I wasn't the only one. By day 150, the air felt thicker, not just colder, denser, like we were breathing something else. The lighting dimmed, even though the bulbs were fine. The shadows grew longer, even at noon. And people started hearing voices. Not loud, not even full words. Just whispers. Like something speaking through the ice. From beneath it, the same phrase over and over in a voice that didn't belong to anyone human. It was not made for man. Some started to worship it. They said it was a god. Others said it was a machine. Petrov said it wasn't either. He said it was sentient geometry. A conscious construct buried before human memory. I told him he was insane. He told me it was already inside our minds. We breached the chamber on day 166. We weren't supposed to. The drilling triggered a collapse, and a frozen tunnel split open to reveal a cavern unlike anything we'd ever seen. Metallic walls, taller than a cathedral, etched in symbols that rearranged themselves when you looked away. Lights blinked along the edges, colors that didn't exist in the visible spectrum but somehow registered in your brain. And at the center, a pedestal. Not a machine, not a throne, a conduit. It pulsed once. Then every light in the station went out. All comms died. The base went cold. And something began crawling up the borehole. I'm writing this now from the auxiliary lab. Power is intermittent. Food is running out. Everyone else is either dead, gone insane, or become something else. Something that speaks in reverse, that walks without sound, that remembers your name even if you never told them. I don't know how long I have left, but if you're reading this Stay Away from Antarctica, the thing we found under the ice, it's not dead. It was waiting, and we woke it up. The blackout lasted 18 hours. No lights, no heat, no contact with the outside world. We gathered in the auxiliary lab with what little backup power remained. Me, Dr. Petrov, Rika, our robotics tech, and Lang, a military attaché who had stopped following orders a week ago. We huddled around the one functioning gas heater, faces flickering in its dull orange glow. Petrov kept muttering to himself, scribbling something onto the inside of his coat sleeve. Complex equations, fractals, diagrams of impossible geometries. I saw one that looked like a Mobius strip inside a cube made of hexagons that bent away from the center. He said it came to him in a dream. Lang had started keeping a sidearm on him at all times, even slept with it tucked under his arm like a teddy bear. I didn't blame him. None of us trusted the station anymore. Hell, we barely trusted each other. It didn't help that the borehole lights were still on. The rest of the station had gone dark, but the string of lamps lining the tunnel down to the chamber, they flickered dimly but never shut off. Even when we disconnected the grid. Even when we smashed the circuit box. They weren't drawing power from the base anymore. They were drawing power from below. On day 170, the first of the missing returned. We found Thomas standing in the corridor near storage D3, naked, silent, covered in frost. His eyes were black, not bruised, empty, like the pupils had taken over the whole iris. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just stood there, trembling. His skin had gone almost translucent. You could see the veins crawling underneath, pulsing to a rhythm we couldn't hear. Lang drew his weapon. I stopped him. We brought Thomas into medical, wrapped him in blankets, tried to take his vitals. Nothing made sense. His body temperature was 29 degrees Celsius, but he wasn't hypothermic. His heart rate was double normal, yet his breathing was shallow. Then Rika leaned close to his ear. "Where did you go?" she asked. Tomas looked at her with those black eyes and said, "I went home." That's when he started screaming. His scream wasn't human. It didn't come from his lungs. It came from everywhere. The walls vibrated. The lights in the hallway shattered. And everyone in the base who'd been having the dreams dropped to their knees, clutching their heads, blood trickling from their noses. We sedated him with enough tranquilizers to drop an elephant. It didn't work. He just stopped. Eyes open, still breathing, but completely still. Rika noticed at first he wasn't blinking. Minutes passed, then hours. His eyes never dried out. Later that night, I reviewed the borehole footage. Before the blackout, we'd been running a probe down into the chamber. It had infrared, sonar, and EM sensors, all of which failed the moment it passed below the 3-mile mark. But the camera had caught something before it went dark. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up in the lab with the footage playing on loop. A single frame burned into the screen. A shape moving at the edge of the chamber. Not walking. Sliding. Too many joints, too smooth to be bone, too long to be flesh. And a face, or at least something wearing one. It looked like Tomas, but wrong. Distorted. Like someone had tried to sculpt a human expression out of wax and failed halfway through. When I tried to pause it, the file deleted itself. Lang called a meeting. He said we had 3 choices. 1. Stay put and die when the supplies ran out. 2. Try to escape and hope the weather didn't kill us first. 3. Go down into the chamber and destroy whatever was powering it. Rika argued for escape. Petrov said it was too late for either. He believed the signal, whatever was being emitted from the structure, was already inside us, that it was changing us. I wasn't sure I disagreed. My dreams had gotten worse. I no longer saw just shapes and corridors. I saw people, myself, standing in a place that didn't exist, looking at a sky that had no stars. They called to me, not with voices, but with memory, showing me things I hadn't lived, or maybe things I would. It made me question time itself. Day 173. We armed ourselves with what little we had, flare guns, old revolvers, makeshift explosives from the lab. Lang took point. Rika modified one of the survey drones to carry a transmitter pulse, like a localized EMP. The hope was it might disrupt whatever energy source the chamber was using. We descended into the borehole tunnel. The lights pulsed faster the deeper we went. Not flickering, pulsing, like a heartbeat. At the bottom, the walls changed. The ice gave way to metal. Cold to the touch, but not frozen. It hummed when you touched it, like it recognized you. And then we saw the door. It wasn't sealed. It wasn't even mechanical. It was just open. A black void framed by impossible angles. Our lights refused to penetrate it. No reflections, no shadows. Just endless dark. Lang tossed in a flare. It vanished before it hit the ground. Inside the chamber, time stopped behaving. My watch said we'd been there 10 minutes. Rika's said 97. Lang's had stopped completely. The room was vast, larger than anything could possibly exist beneath the ice. The geometry shifted when you weren't looking directly at it. Walls moved, floors curved. We had to tie ropes to each other just to avoid getting separated. We found the pedestal again. Only this time it was awake, pulsing, breathing. Light radiated from it in waves. Not normal light, memory light. It showed me things. Childhood, college. The face of a woman I'd loved and lost, but warped, rearranged, like my mind was being reorganized into something more useful. Then Rika screamed. Something had grabbed her. Not with hands, with thought. She was suspended in midair, convulsing, her body arcing backward unnaturally. Her eyes rolled up, blood ran from her ears. Lang fired his weapon. Pointless. I lunged at the pedestal and triggered the pulse on the drone. For 1 second, everything went silent. The humming stopped, the light flickered. Rika dropped to the floor like a puppet with cut strings, and then it screamed back. The entire chamber vibrated, the walls flexed like lungs inhaling. And somewhere above us, the tunnel collapsed. We were trapped. We carried Rika to a side corridor. At least, we thought it was a corridor. The path led us deeper, through layers of what looked like machinery fused with bone. Spinal columns etched with glyphs, rib-like arches overhead, pipes that bled black fluid. Petrov met us there. Only Petrov had been missing for a week. He was clean, dry, no frostbite, as if he'd never left. He smiled calmly and said, "The structure showed me everything." Lang raised his weapon. I stopped him again. "Where have you been?" I asked. Petrov pointed behind him to a wall that pulsed with organic circuitry. "It's not a prison," he said. "It's a message." Lang whispered, "He's infected." Petrov stepped forward. "I understand now," he said, "what we are, where we come from." Then he opened his mouth too wide and started speaking in reverse. Lang shot him. 3 times. Petrov didn't fall, didn't flinch. He just smiled wider, blood leaking from his lips as his mouth continued to stretch, cracking, tearing. And then something inside him pushed forward. We ran. I don't remember how long we ran. Days? Hours? Time had no meaning down there. The walls twisted, the paths looped. We passed our own footprints going the opposite direction. Eventually, we found a hatch. A real one. Steel, human-made, marked with USF, 1959. We slammed it open and fell through into a concrete hallway lit with dying fluorescent tubes. A sign above us read, "Operation Deep. Silence, Sublevel 7. Lang looked at me, breathing hard. "What the hell is this?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. Because the station we thought was built in 1998 was actually built on top of something that had been buried since before the Cold War. We're in the sublevels now. There's food, power, Old tech that still works. We've barricaded ourselves in. Rika is still unconscious. Her heartbeat is irregular. She whispers in her sleep, using words that don't belong in any known language. Lang thinks we need to try going back up. I think we need to go deeper. Because if there's one thing I'm sure of now, we didn't discover this place. We were led to it. And something in here remembers us, even though it shouldn't. The noise in the comms room wasn't mechanical. It had cadence, rhythm like breathing, and it was getting closer. Dr. Evelyn Park slowly lowered the receiver, her face pale. That wasn't static, she whispered. We were all frozen. 4 scientists alone at the bottom of the world, listening to something that sounded alive coming through the wires of a supposedly dormant station. Before anyone could say more, the power flickered again. The overhead lights surged, humming loud like a beehive, then dimmed to a dull yellow. I pushed past them and ran to the systems terminal. No surge, no power reroute, no errors at all. Someone's manipulating the grid, I said aloud. Or something. Evelyn opened her laptop, flipping back to the signal spectrogram. The strange signal was still transmitting, but now it had changed frequencies. It was modulating, adapting. It's almost like it's trying to talk, she said. We spent the next hour analyzing it, trying every decryption method we had. No known cipher, no Morse, not a military frequency either. Dr. Tennyson finally stepped back from the wall of equipment and said quietly, "That's not a message. It's a mimicry." "What?" Evelyn asked. "It's not sending information. It's repeating what it hears, like an echo, or something learning to speak by copying us." The idea chilled me deeper than the cold outside ever could. We decided not to mention it in our next comms session with McMurdo. Too much we didn't understand yet. Too much we couldn't explain without sounding insane. That night, none of us slept. 2 days later, the storm broke. Clear skies returned and we had a chopper window. We decided to fly out to the ancient structure we'd first spotted the geometric anomaly in the ice. We brought every available scanner we had. Geiger counters, ground-penetrating radar, spectrometers, and weapons, just in case. The flight was dead silent. The pilot, Rami, looked nervous as hell. His hands shook slightly on the controls. When I asked what was wrong, he just said, "This place, it's wrong. Feels like gravity pulls different here." The moment we landed, the unease deepened. There was no sound. Not wind, not birds. Nothing. Evelyn looked at the scanner and blinked. "That's not possible." "What?" "We're not standing on solid ground," she said. "The entire area under us is hollow." The structure we'd seen from satellite, a jagged ring of unnatural geometry, wasn't a building. It was the tip of something buried deep beneath the ice. Something huge. Something not human. As we circled the edges of the anomaly, our equipment went haywire. Compass needles spun erratically. GPS failed. The deeper we scanned, the more impossible it became. The walls beneath the ice weren't stone or ice or metal. They were something else entirely. Something that absorbed signals, muffled radar, bent light. The Geiger counter started clicking. "Radiation?" I asked. "Not quite," Evelyn said. "It's not nuclear. It's directional. It pulses, like a beacon. That's when we found the hole." Near the far edge of the formation, hidden beneath a drift, was a perfectly circular shaft maybe 3 meters wide bored straight through the ice. It looked machine-made, but no drill in the world could have cut that perfectly or smoothly. We looked down into it, nothing but darkness. "I'm going in," I said. Evelyn grabbed my arm. "You're insane. We don't know what's down there." I looked at her, then the rest of the team. "We came to find the truth. We're here now. We have to." Rami anchored the winch and lowered me slowly into the shaft. The rope creaked with tension as I descended. 30 feet, 50, 100. Then I saw it. At first, I thought my flashlight was failing. But no, the light was being absorbed. The walls around me were like obsidian, smooth and black and hungry for illumination. And then the shaft ended not at a chamber, but a membrane, a thin organic-looking veil that pulsed ever so slightly, like something breathing. I tapped it gently with a metal probe. It quivered, then parted. On the other side was a room vast, silent, and impossibly old. The walls weren't made of stone or metal. They were like petrified bone, laced with strange metallic filaments. Symbols not carved but grown lined the surfaces in impossible arrangements, shifting subtly when I looked away. And in the center was a pedestal. Something lay atop it. It looked like a fossil at first. A humanoid figure, skeletal, elongated, its skull narrow and swept back, with too many eye sockets. I approached, breath shallow. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't fossilized. It wasn't dead. It was hibernating. I radioed up. "You're not going to believe this." "What is it?" Evelyn's voice crackled. "Something's asleep down here, something alive." The line went dead. Static poured into my ear, then stopped. A voice distorted, childlike, repeated, "Alive. Down here. Alive." It was my voice repeating what I'd just said. I looked around. The shadows seemed to stretch closer, the room slightly darker than before. I pulled my flashlight to the edge of the chamber and noticed something horrifying. More pods. More figures, not just one. Dozens. They were everywhere, curled into the walls like insects in amber. Waiting. I felt a tremor in the floor. Faint, rhythmic. They were waking up. I hit the winch control and was yanked upward faster than I liked, but I didn't care. I needed out. I emerged into the sunlight, gasping. "They're not dead," I said to the others. "They're sleeping. And I think we just set off an alarm." We barely made it back to base. That night, the signal returned, stronger than ever. Our instruments lit up. One of the underground pods had activated. I don't know how, but we triggered a response. Or maybe we just broke a seal that was meant to stay closed. That's when McMurdo went dark. Every transmission to them gone. The satellite feed blacked out. We tried relaying to other international stations. Nothing. Then we got a ping. A voice buried in noise. "Turn back. Get out. They're waking. Don't let them reach the surface." It repeated again. And again. And then stopped. We just stared at each other. I think that's when it really sank in no one was coming to help us. Not because they didn't want to. Because they couldn't. We spent the next 12 hours trying to re-establish any contact with the outside world. Nothing. Every frequency we used was met with silence or static. The satellite relay kept pinging a connection but never locked on. It was as if the entire region had gone radio blind. Evelyn pored over the spectral data we'd collected before the blackout. "The signal shifted again," she said. "It's broadcasting in bursts now. Wide spectrum, like it's calling out." "To what?" I asked. She didn't answer. Tennyson and I reviewed the footage from my body cam. The shaft, the hibernation chamber, the creature, the pods. The sound had recorded 2 low-frequency pulses that felt like a heartbeat when we amplified them. There was a pattern to it. A countdown. "We didn't just trigger a response," Tennyson muttered. "We woke up a system." That night, we heard the first noises outside the base. It started faint. a distant clicking like insects. Then the ice around the compound groaned unnaturally. Deep creaks echoed through the structure far beneath us. We armed ourselves. Everything we had, flare guns, rifles, even ice axes. But we were scientists, not soldiers. Around 2 a.m., one of the emergency floodlights cut on by itself. I looked through the frost-covered window. Something was moving across the ice. It didn't walk like a man. It scuttled. Low to the ground, pale, it moved too quickly, then stopped dead when the light hit it. I leaned closer. That was a mistake. The thing's head jerked upward. Not just toward the light toward me. It saw me through the glass. Its eyes, if that's what they were, reflected the beam like a predator's. Then it vanished in a blur, straight into the snow. I backed away, heart racing. "They're out," I whispered, "at least one of them." We locked down the base, every entry, every sub-level hatch. But the sense of isolation became suffocating. Tennyson went catatonic, just sat in the corner repeating the same sentence. "It's older than us, older than time. It dreams in ice." Evelyn and I tried to comfort him, but the truth is, I was starting to feel it too, the pressure, the presence, like something vast and ancient was brushing against our minds. Not hostile, not yet, but curious. 3 days passed. The snowstorm returned unnatural in its suddenness and density. Visibility dropped to 0. It was like the base had been swallowed. We debated evacuation. Problem was, no signal meant no chopper, no backup, no emergency beacon. We were on our own. That's when the digging started. Not us, them. The seismic sensors picked up small tremors, rhythmic impacts growing in strength. Something was tunneling upward from below the anomaly. We calculated the distance. Based on rate and proximity, they'd breach the surface in under 72 hours. And then, we didn't know. Day 4. Rami vanished. He'd gone to the generator shed alone. It was 20 yards from the main building. He never came back. We suited up and went to look. What we found inside chilled us more than anything before. The floor was coated in a thin black slime, thick, tar-like, steaming slightly in the cold. Rami's parka was there, his boots, but not him. No blood, no sign of struggle. Just gone. On the far wall, written in the dark ooze, were 3 words in shaky, inhuman script. "We remember everything," Evelyn vomited. Tennyson collapsed. I just stared at the words, unable to move. It wasn't just physical now. Whatever we'd disturbed, it was conscious, and it remembered. Remembered what? Themselves. Us? Something else entirely? Back in the lab, I pulled up the oldest geological scans we had of the region. Core samples, deep crust readings, magnetic anomaly maps. And then it hit me. The anomaly we thought was a buried structure. It wasn't buried. The ice formed around it. It had been here long before the first snowfall, before humans, maybe before life itself. The thing I saw the creature was a sentry, a sentinel lying in wait. And we'd tripped the alarm. Evelyn came to me later, eyes wide, trembling. "It's not just physical," she whispered. "It's mental, psychic, like it's leaking into us. I've been dreaming. Dreams that aren't mine, languages I don't know, shapes I can't describe." She wasn't alone. We'd all been having them. Visions of cities carved into ice, suns that bled, starless skies and oceans without surface, things that moved in ways physics shouldn't allow. Entire ecosystems built on geometry folding and unfolding like origami made of flesh and thought. It was beautiful and horrifying. Day 5, we heard knocking. From inside the base, 3 slow thuds. from beneath the floor. Then silence. Then again, closer this time. The hatch to sublevel C, where we stored cold samples, creaked open by itself. I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave without answers. I descended with Evelyn. The air grew colder with every step, until it hurt to breathe. When we reached the bottom, the walls were coated in frost, but the center of the room had thawed. A wide circle of exposed steel, perfectly smooth. Evelyn stepped forward. The moment her boot crossed the threshold, the lights flickered and a voice spoke. Not out loud, in our heads. You are children standing in the ruins of gods. We both screamed. The steel beneath us pulsed once, then receded, revealing a tunnel spiraling downward. An invitation. Back upstairs, we prepared for descent. I tried one last Hail Mary attempt at communication shortwave high-burst Morse SOS. To my shock, it got a response. 3 short pulses, then 3 long, then 3 short. SOS, then a voice old, strained. This is Dome. We see you. We're coming. I blinked. Dome was an old Chinese research station, decommissioned years ago. Was someone still there? Or was something else using it as a mouthpiece? Either way, it meant one thing. We were not alone in this. As we prepared to descend into the tunnel beneath our base, something shifted in the wind. The sky. It had changed. Above the horizon, where the Southern Cross should have been, was a new light. Pale, violet, flickering. A star? A signal? Or the doorway they were waiting for? Tennyson finally spoke again. They're not from another planet, he whispered. They're from before. Before Earth. Before time. They were here when the stars were young. And now they're waking up. I didn't ask how he knew. Because deep down, I felt it too. We all did. And we were going to follow them into the dark. We descended into the tunnel beneath the sublevel C just before midnight. The walls weren't made of ice or rock. They were smooth, ribbed like the inside of a seashell, a soft bioluminescent glow emanating from within. The light pulsed rhythmic, organic, alive. With every step, it felt like we were entering something not built, but grown. Tennyson stayed above to monitor us. Evelyn and I continued downward, our breaths fogging inside our suits. The temperature wasn't dropping anymore. In fact, it was warming. After 20 meters, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched like the dome of a cathedral. Strange monoliths stood in a circle around a depression in the center, like stone pylons, but they weren't stone. They pulsed gently, humming at a frequency that made my stomach flutter. Evelyn knelt beside one, her gloved fingers hovering above it. "Don't touch anything," I said. "I'm not. It's touching me." She turned to me slowly. Her pupils had dilated until her eyes were almost black. "They remember us," she said. "Not us specifically, but our kind." I didn't ask how she knew, I just listened. She stepped forward and stood in the center of the circle. That's when the chamber reacted. The monoliths began to rotate, not physically, but visually, their surfaces folding and refolding, reshaping like reflections on liquid. The chamber's light dimmed, and then everything vanished. We weren't in the cave anymore. We were standing on the surface of a different world. A hallucination? A vision? Projection? I don't know. But I felt the air. I smelled the strange ozone. I heard the wind screaming across alien stone. Before us stretched a landscape that defied physics. Black mountains floating in the sky, rivers of mercury, towers made of bones, not dead ones, but living, writhing, hive-like structures that pulsed with the same color as the monoliths. And above it all, a sky full of dead suns. "This is where they came from," Evelyn whispered. "No," I said. "This is where they escaped from." We snapped back. The chamber was silent again. Evelyn stumbled. Her nose was bleeding. "I heard them," she muttered. "They were screaming. Back in the base, we barely slept." I tried analyzing the electromagnetic pulses from the monoliths. Each frequency had a resonance that overlapped with human brainwave patterns delta, theta, even gamma. They weren't just sending signals. They were communicating through dreams. And we'd just become receivers. Tennyson finally admitted the truth. He'd seen something, too, in his head, a map, not just of the structure, but of a network. There were more of these, buried nodes across the planet, one beneath the Mariana Trench, one under the Siberian tundra, another in the Sahara. Antarctica wasn't the source. It was the keystone. Later that day, Dome finally arrived. Not convoy, not a chopper. One man. He came on foot across the ice wearing a high-altitude environmental suit with no markings. We watched from the base as he trudged forward, step by step, until he stood 10 feet from our airlock. He waved once, and then collapsed. We brought him inside, stripped his suit, and laid him on a stretcher. He was frostbitten, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked, but alive. Name, Dr. Sung-Il Kwan, astrophysicist. He'd been alone for weeks, ever since his team disappeared. "They followed the hum," he said weakly. "One by one. I stayed behind. I knew what it was, or I thought I did." He sat up slowly, looked me dead in the eyes. "It's not just buried, it's broadcasting." "To where?" I asked. He smiled a horrible, tired smile. "Outward." The next tremor shook the entire base. We dropped to the floor as lights flickered and a massive crack opened in the hangar wall. The creature we'd seen before, the one that had watched us from the ice, was inside. But this time, it wasn't alone. 3 others followed, pale and sinewy. Not identical, but similar. Evolutionary cousins. Different castes. They didn't attack. They circled us. Watching. Studying. Like zookeepers examining a strange new species. One of them reached toward Evelyn. I raised my flare gun. It turned and hissed, not in fear, but in amusement. Then it touched its own chest and emitted a single, complex tone. A name? A signal? Evelyn repeated it instinctively and it stopped moving. They stared at each other in silence. Then all 4 creatures turned and walked back out into the snow. Gone. That night, Evelyn translated what she'd heard. "It's not their name," she said. "It's their role, their function." She drew a glyph on the whiteboard, one of the shapes we'd seen on the monoliths. "This symbol means warden." Over the next 24 hours, everything accelerated. More tremors, more visions. And then, on day 9, the tunnel beneath the chamber began to sing. It wasn't music. It was structure. A resonant frequency that vibrated our bones and triggered nausea in half the team. Dr. Kwan said it was a kind of quantum key, a password made of vibration. "It's unlocking something," he said. "Can we stop it?" I asked. He shook his head. "It's not something you stop. It's something you survive." On the 10th night, the sky opened. The new star we'd seen above the Southern Cross expanded. Not just in brightness and detail. It wasn't a star at all. It was a shape, a pattern. A lattice of burning symbols suspended in the atmosphere. Tennyson screamed when he saw it. "That's not in the sky. It's in our heads." He was right. It was a projection not just onto our eyes, but onto our reality. A kind of reality-bending encryption key. a cognitive virus embedded in light, the final trigger. And when it completed its pattern, the monoliths all around the base lit up like beacons. The structure beneath us awoke, and the last seal began to break. The final seal wasn't a door, it was us. The realization struck as the resonance built inside the base, as the structures beneath our feet harmonized with the pattern in the sky. Every part of this place, the monoliths, the creatures, the visions, they weren't just passively waiting. They were reading us, our biology, our minds, our emotions. The key wasn't something we turned. We were the key. And something had just turned us. Evelyn convulsed first. She collapsed mid-sentence, her body writhing as if caught between frequencies. Blood seeped from her ears. Her suit's vitals alarmed brainwave spikes, cardiac irregularities. I held her down, but she gripped my wrist and smiled through clenched teeth. "They're inside now," she said. "No more barriers." Then she passed out. Dr. Kwan locked himself in the comms room and began transmitting signals into deep space. I heard him muttering the sequence over and over again. 63 Alpha 99, modulation Gamma 14, sequence Delta. When I asked who he was contacting, he didn't answer, just stared at the screen. Then I noticed something horrifying. His reflection in the glass didn't match his movements. I sealed off the monolith chamber. Too late. Whatever signal had been sent or received couldn't be stopped. The entire landscape began to change. The auroras above us distorted into structures, latticeworks of geometry rotating in impossible ways, colors we didn't have names for, angles that broke my depth perception. Somewhere above us, in orbit, something opened, a rift, a veil, a receiver. And the base's system's comms, power, even mechanical doors began responding to it, not to us. Tennyson was the last to crack. He dragged me to the lab screaming about contagion vectors and cognitive contamination. He wanted to burn the entire facility. He poured accelerant on the floor, trying to ignite the monolith samples. But the samples didn't burn. They absorbed the fire, drank it like fuel. When he saw that, he fell to his knees and cried. "It's not science," he said. "It's reconstruction. They're rebuilding it through us." "What?" He looked up, face hollow. "The biosphere, the structure of memory, Earth, us, all of it. It's not a prison, it's an ark." The truth came in pieces after that. This place, Antarctica, wasn't always frozen. It wasn't always a wasteland. Long ago it was the center of something older, an anchoring node for a global system, not just biological informational, Earth's consciousness network. And then something came from outside. A war? A purge? No, a containment. They buried the node. They iced the continent. They erased our memory genetically. And they left guardians, those pale creatures, the wardens, not to protect us, but to ensure the lock remained closed. Until now. Evelyn woke up on day 12, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She wasn't Evelyn anymore. Not entirely. "It chose me," she said softly. We stood in the monolith chamber, now fully illuminated. Every glyph rotated in the air like a holographic atom. She moved between them like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "It's not a message," she said. "It's an invitation." To what? To remember. And then the floor opened. The true facility was never the base. It was what lay beneath. Miles of vertical shaft spiraling downward into a cathedral of light and code. Symbols etched on walls, doors, beams spinning slowly like gyroscopes, refracting every step of consciousness. I saw things I can't explain. A chamber of cloned embryos, frozen in stasis. A library of dreams stored in liquid medium. A room where music altered gravity. This wasn't just alien technology. It was us. Before us, a seed civilization. And the seed had just cracked open. At the lowest level, we found the core. Not a reactor, not a brain. Something in between. A sphere floating, humming, bleeding light into space. Evelyn approached it. The sphere pulsed, her body lifted into the air. Not like levitation, more like transmission. Her form blurred, pixelated, dissolved into shimmering particles not destroyed, but uploaded. And then the sphere dimmed. Quiet, cold. She never came back. That night, Quan and I stood outside the base and looked at the sky. The shape was gone. The stars had returned. Something had changed globally. We wouldn't know how far until the satellites came back online, if they ever came back online. But I felt it in the atmosphere, like pressure after a thunderstorm. Quan turned to me and asked, "Do you think she survived?" "No," I said. "I think she transcended." He nodded once. "Then we should bury this place again." And we did. We collapsed the entrance and burned the records. Sent encrypted messages to the international councils, claiming contamination, structural failure, psychological breakdowns. They'll mark the facility as lost. No rescue mission will come. No new team will be sent. The cold will reclaim it. And maybe, just maybe, the lock will hold. For a little longer. But every so often, late at night, I dream of the chamber again. Of Evelyn's voice inside the core. Of symbols that twist through my mind like DNA. And I wake with blood on my pillow and forgotten words on my tongue. The world isn't what we thought it was. And Antarctica? Antarctica was never the end. It was the beginning.